The dust settled across the Montana plains as Jackson Cole leaned against the weathered porch railing, watching the sun dip below the horizon. 7 years had passed since the accident. 7 years since he'd buried an empty casket and tried to piece together a life that felt permanently shattered. The ranch still ran, the cattle still grazed, but the house remained hollow, filled with memories that both comforted and tormented him. He'd met Sarah at a county fair when they were barely 20. She had laughed at his clumsy attempts to win her a stuffed bear at the ring toss, then showed him how it was done, winning 3 in a row. They were married within a year, and the ranch that had been in his family for 4 generations became theirs together. She'd brought life to every corner of it, planting wildflowers by the fence posts, painting the shutters a cheerful yellow, and filling the kitchen with the smell of fresh bread and her grandmother's secret recipe chili.
The accident happened on a winter evening.
Sarah had driven into town for supplies and never came home. They found her truck at the bottom of a ravine, twisted and burned beyond recognition. The sheriff said she must have hit black ice on the mountain pass. There wasn't enough left to identify, but her purse was there, her wedding ring fused to a piece of metal. Jackson had stood at her funeral in a daze, accepting condolences from neighbors while feeling like he was watching his life from underwater. Now, he ran the ranch alone with the help of 2 seasonal workers. He was 43 and felt ancient. His dark hair had gone gray at the temples, and lines creased his face that hadn't been there before. People in town had tried to set him up over the years, gentle suggestions that he should move on, but Jackson couldn't imagine loving anyone else. Sarah had been his whole world. The sound of a car engine pulled him from his thoughts. A dark sedan was making its way up the long gravel drive, unusual for this time of evening. Jackson rarely had visitors unannounced. He straightened, squinting against the fading light as the car pulled to a stop near the house. A woman emerged first, middle-aged with kind eyes and a professional manner. She wore slacks and a blazer, clearly not from around here. But it was the 2 small figures that climbed out of the back seat that made Jackson's heart stop. 2 little girls, identical in every way, with long dark hair and eyes that struck him like lightning. They couldn't have been more than 6 years old, holding hands as they looked up at the house with a mixture of fear and wonder. And their faces, those faces, they had Sarah's nose, her delicate chin, the same arch to their eyebrows. "Mr. Cole," the woman called out, approaching with a briefcase. "I'm Caroline Bennett from Child Protective Services. I apologize for coming unannounced, but this situation is rather extraordinary." Jackson couldn't speak. He couldn't take his eyes off the girls who stood frozen near the car, watching him with those achingly familiar features. "Mr. Cole, these are Emma and Lily. I need to speak with you about their mother." Their mother. The words came out strangled. Ms. Bennett glanced at the girls, then back at Jackson. "Perhaps we could talk inside?" He nodded numbly and led them into the house. The girls walked in slowly, their eyes taking in everything, the worn leather couch, the stone fireplace, the photographs on the mantel. Jackson saw them stop at a large framed photo of Sarah, their small faces tilting up to study it. "That's Mama," one of them whispered to the other. Jackson's knees nearly gave out. He gripped the back of a chair, staring at Ms. Bennett. "What is this?
What is going on?"
The woman set her briefcase down and pulled out a folder. "Mr. Cole, 3 days ago, a woman named Sarah Cole died in a hospital in Portland, Oregon. Before she passed, she told the hospital staff about her daughters and gave them this address. She said their father was here, that his name was Jackson Cole."
"That is impossible."
"Sarah died 7 years ago. I buried her. Did you identify the body yourself?"
Jackson has a mind reeled back.
"There wasn't. They said there wasn't enough left. Her belongings were there, her ring. Mr. Cole, I have medical records here. Sarah Cole survived that accident, but she suffered severe injuries, including a traumatic brain injury that caused significant memory loss. She was found wandering near Portland several days after the accident, confused and unable to remember her identity. The hospital listed her as Jane Doe, and she was eventually placed in a care facility."
Jackson sank into the chair.
"That's not possible." She regained some memories over the years, fragmented pieces. She remembered a ranch, a man named Jackson, but not where or how to find you. The facility staff said she often talked about Montana, but she couldn't remember specific details. 2 years after the accident, she discovered she was pregnant. She had twins and named them Emma and Lily, names she said came to her in dreams. The girls had moved closer, standing just a few feet away now, studying him with intense curiosity. One of them, braver than the other, stepped forward. "Are you our daddy?" she asked, her voice small but clear. "Mama said we have a daddy who lives on a ranch with horses and cows. She said he would love us if we ever found him."
Jackson's vision blurred with tears.
He looked at these two perfect little girls, at Sarah's features reflected in their faces, and felt 7 years of grief crash over him in waves. "She talked about me?" Ms. Bennett nodded gently. "According to her care workers, she talked about you often, especially in the last few months. Her health had been declining, complications from her original injuries. She made them promise to find you, to bring the girls to you. We ran fingerprints, checked dental records from the hospital against what we could find from the original accident report. Mr. Cole, I'm as certain as I can be that Sarah Cole was your wife. Why didn't she come home? If she remembered, why didn't she find me? The brain injury was severe. She had aphasia, confusion, and significant cognitive impairment. By the time she started remembering more clearly, she was very ill. I think she wanted to come home, Mr. Cole. I think she tried in her own way." Jackson wiped his eyes roughly and looked at the girls. Emma and Lily. His daughters.
Sarah's daughters. You really think I'm your daddy? The quieter one, Lily, stepped forward now.
She reached into her small backpack and pulled out a worn photograph, handing it to him. It was a picture of Sarah and Jackson on their wedding day, creased and faded. Sarah must have had it in her purse during the accident. "Mama kept this always," Lily said softly. "She said this was the man she loved. She said you were the best person she ever knew." Jackson took the photograph with shaking hands, remembering the day it was taken, how Sarah had laughed when he'd stepped on her dress during their first dance, how she'd whispered that she couldn't wait to spend forever with him. He'd thought forever had been stolen from them, but here was Sarah's legacy, standing in front of him, her eyes and her smile reflected in two beautiful little girls.
"Do you want Stati Uniti?"
Emma asked suddenly, her voice catching. "Mama said you would, but the lady said we might have to go to a foster home if you don't." Jackson dropped to his knees, bringing himself to their level. 7 years of loneliness, of grief, of believing his chance at family had died in that ravine, all of it seemed to shift in that moment. "Want you? I've wanted nothing more than to have Sarah back, and here you are, both of you.
You're my daughters.
Then we can stay?" Lily asked, her eyes welling with tears. "We can live on the ranch like Mama told us about?" "You can stay forever," Jackson said, his voice breaking.
"This is your home."
"This has always been your home." Emma burst into tears and threw her arms around his neck, and Lily followed a moment later. Jackson held them both, these two miracles who had walked through his door and called him daddy, and felt his broken heart begin to mend. Sarah was gone, truly gone now, and he would grieve her all over again. But she had given him the most precious gift before she left. 2 little girls who carried her spirit, her strength, and her love. Ms. Bennett worked with him over the following weeks to complete the adoption paperwork and arrange everything legally. DNA tests confirmed what Jackson already knew in his heart. Emma and Lily were his biological daughters. The twins slowly settled into ranch life, learning to feed the chickens, riding gentle horses, and filling the house with laughter that had been absent for far too long. Jackson told them stories about their mother, about how brave and funny and kind she had been. He showed them her garden, now overgrown, and together they began to restore it. He taught them her grandmother's chili recipe and how to braid rope like Sarah used to do. On quiet evenings, when the girls were asleep, Jackson would look at that wedding photograph and whisper thank you to the woman he'd loved and lost and found again through his daughters. Sarah had fought her way back to him in the only way she could, and though the journey had been impossibly cruel and complex, she'd made sure their love survived. The ranch felt alive again, filled with purpose and joy. And sometimes, when the wind blew just right through the wildflowers that Emma and Lily had helped him plant, Jackson could swear he heard Sarah's laugh, content and proud, watching over the family she'd never stopped fighting to protect.